welcome back to our second episode of the AI Ate My Homework podcast.
And today we have Dr. Jason Jaggers with us, who is a faculty member in the Department of Health and Sports Sciences over in the College of Education and Human Development.
Could you give me a quick description of the assignment?
Yeah, so this class is Foundations of Anatomy and Physiology, and this particular assignment is a case study that provides a description of a hypothetical individual, gives some of their background information as far as their physical activity habits, their family history of certain chronic diseases, and this one in particular is focusing on cardiovascular disease or the cardiovascular system, and so it's assigned during the time in class that we cover that particular chapter as a way to demonstrate their understanding of the material using a real-world type setting or individual and giving them numbers with their lab results, what their blood lipids are, what their blood pressure is, height, weight, and some prior history.
And just to kind of give you a bit of an insight of what I did, I dropped your assignment prompt into ChatGPT, and it initially just gave me a whole bunch of bullet points, which is classic AI. I asked it for a written report, and this is where ChatGPT switched to its new canvas, where they actually do a document, and they wrote it out for me. And then it let me do just a little bit of edits where I said, could you make it a little shorter? This is for a sophomore level class. Could you adjust this a little bit? And it took me about a total of 15 minutes. So giving you that kind of insight, what did you think of that AI generated work?
Well, I thought that for the most part, it did a great job with getting the questions correct. But there were some surprises that I noticed regarding the formatting of how it answered the questions that are also kind of, sort of telltale signs that may not be the student's actual work.
What kind of weirdnesses did you see?
Well, the very first thing that stood out was how it labeled the questions with question one, which is not question one actually in the actual assignment that's being asked, but it's regurgitating the description of the case study.
Oh.
So that right there is telling me, okay, well, they didn't answer question one, but they do answer that in question number two, which is really question one. So the format, I think, was one thing that was really surprising that I wasn't expecting AI to get incorrect.
Yeah, very not human-like.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. And that's one of those things, like it doesn't know what it's doing. I mean, and that's one of those things to always remember when it's spitting out this kind of information that, as you said, but the answers overall seemed correct, or at least close to correct. Otherwise,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got the answers correct. There's one question that's sort of, it's almost like a trick question, but if students get it correct, they'll get bonus points for it. But if it's if they come up with a different answer or the same one that the AI came up with, then they'll still get the full credit for that question because blood pressure guidelines change. And what we consider now stage 1 or stage 2 hypertension is different than what it was in the past. And that's an area that a lot of students at all levels really still sort of get incorrect, I guess, as far as for the more specific guidelines. And then another thing I noticed also was how it showed the actual way in which it calculated to come to the conclusion of an answer for some of the questions that, yes, there is a calculation involved, but it's very rare for students to show their work on those calculations. And one in particular, I provided a very specific website for them to plug in body weight and height and then report the person's body mass index. And so they just usually put the number instead of actually showing the calculation, which the AI did show the calculation. But again, it's the correct answer, but it would be another telltale sign that wasn't exactly what I was asking.
So how well overall did it meet the objectives? Is it showing you the type of learning that you would want to see from students?
Yes. Yes, it is. And sort of kind of going above and beyond my general expectations for what this course level is, which would be freshman, sophomore mostly. It did a really nice job of explaining the rationale behind some of the answers, in which some cases students will do that as well on the actual assignments. But it's not something that I ask for all the questions, whereas with this, it did actually kind of go in to explain its reasoning for answering the answer that it gave.
Mm-hmm. So did it struggle with any other particular aspect? Was there anything else that kind of stood out to you that made it seem more AI or that maybe excelled?
The very end of the assignment, where it actually provided some final recommendations for this particular case study, again, isn't something that I asked for in this assignment, but would probably be a good sort of follow-up either in class to sort of have a discussion going regarding some recommendations that could be made. But for this specific assignment, I wasn't really asking for that, but it still put together a list of final recommendations, even though there was no prompt requesting that information.
Interesting.
So again, if they were to put that on their assignment, it would be a little suspicious because it's not asked.
Is there anything that students normally struggle with on that assignment?
They usually struggle with identifying the risk factors for cardiovascular disease that are specific to this particular case study. They will normally answer that question in general about what risk factors are and what might put someone at risk. But I don't know if it's because the students don't fully read the question or don't take the time to go back and look at the results within the case study that was provided to them to come to the conclusion as far as for this particular individual, what his risk factors are, not what are the general risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
But the AI did a pretty good job of that part, didn't it?
Yes.
Because it really didn't give anything extra or more broad.
It was spot on exactly with this particular individual and what his risk factors would be.
If you were going to redesign the assignment, knowing how the AI would do this, what sort of things would you think about? How would you maybe approach that to keep the AI from being able to answer the question so right on the money?
Probably providing a few additional resources outside of the general description of the case as far as where they can do a little bit of research to find the answers and look for more specific answers based on those resources that were provided. Whereas with the AI, it's still answering the correct information, but sometimes did it in a way that wasn't being asked or doing more than what's being asked.
So making it that more contextually specific to your class.
Yes.
So do you think that there's a good opportunity maybe for AI to be used as part of an assignment like this, though, as opposed to making a way to get around it or stop it? Is there an opportunity to benefit from the AI being used in this assignment?
Yes, I think that there is one thing in particular that I could add to this assignment, or as another case study assignment. Something that I've done with my graduate level class in the past was have them pretty much giving them the instructions to copy and paste this as is into ChatGPT, and then copy and paste the response for the answer, but then evaluate the response or the answers that were given by artificial intelligence and whether or not it was accurate and also what it could have done better or what it missed, if anything. So getting them to actually evaluate the response of AI, I think would also show a demonstration that they still have the knowledge that AI doesn't as far as that human approach to certain things and aspect of things, to where they also sort of identify strong critical thinking skills based on what they've been learning in class.
So what specific skills or competencies should we be emphasizing if AI is going to become one of these standard tools? Is it going to be use it to do some of these base levels and then do the higher level thinking? Or do you think there's other ways that we could work with AI or that we're going to have to work with AI as we move further into education?
Well, I do think that we're just going to have to find a way to work with AI. How that looks for different areas of education, I don't know, or even at different levels of learning. So whether it's an undergraduate class, lower level or higher level, or a graduate level class, there's different ways in which we would have to modify the assignments to get what we're looking for out of the students and their ability to actually demonstrate their understanding of the material. And for writing in general, I think there could be some good uses there for helping proofread or improve a student's writing ability to help them identify strengths and weaknesses within their own writing skills. But that could also open the door for students to then use the AI platform to write something and then just asking it in a different way to assess that writing. So I think there's still a lot that we have to learn to see where AI is going to answer that, but definitely do believe that there's going to be certain things about AI that students will need to learn, and the more they know about it, the better they will be prepared for the real-world job, whether it's continuing on to grad school or if it's getting a job and working for whatever company. There's going to be some aspect of AI, I think.
Just about everywhere.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I like the discovery of its limitations and knowing, having them look at that output right now. So, because again, as you said, who knows where it goes? But right now, there's definitely limitations, and there's definitely areas where it falls short or fails completely or just makes it up sometimes,
Yeah, I've seen that too.
So thinking about helping students and knowing that they need to be able to use this, what other techniques do you think we need to give them? Other skills do we need to give them so that they can thrive in using AI tools?
That's a great question. With the way AI is changing, it's very hard to answer that question because even if we're trying to teach them how to use it in an effective way and a way that is going to be more of a benefit to doing a better job than a detriment to getting a job done quickly, is a very fine line. And so there are good ways you can use AI for either putting in prompts to help generate some general ideas or summarize a long stack of articles, and then also for day-to-day communication, either by email or identifying whether or not the tone, I guess, of that communication might be what they think it is or how it might come across or how to better improve those aspects. And to an extent with things like Excel spreadsheets or other platforms that they might be using, there might be a way to get a specific code or function or equation that they can plug in quickly without necessarily needing to spend hours doing the work to try to figure out how to get that done correctly. Because there are some tasks that I think could be beneficial using AI, and then other tasks where it's just cheating.
So you mentioned some things are cheating, some things are efficiencies. What kind of boundaries do you draw in your class about AI use?
Right now, I make it very clear that use of AI for writing is not allowed. So I try to draw that strict line to where it is a form of plagiarism. And if identified, there would be repercussions. But first, there are some assignments that they would be expected to have visuals included. And that's where in the syllabus, I also say you can use it to help produce visuals for this presentation project or other assignments that I may have throughout the semester to where visuals are expected. And I do it that way because not everyone has the ability to create their own visuals in a very appealing way, or will spend hours trying to for just one image. And I don't want the students to get in the habit of, for lack of a better word, stealing images off the web and using those. So I think there is some room there to where AI can be beneficial for helping students create an image of something that they're trying to convey without having to sit there and draw it out themselves or use a platform that they're not familiar with to be able to create that image.
Sure. You would hate if I was in your class because you'd have just all sorts of stick figure drawings because that's the best that I could ever swing.
Yeah, same here.
So do you have any advice for your peer faculty about how to approach this, think about it in their field, how to adapt their teaching methods, or just what do we do?
I think right now just learning more about what it can do and what its output looks like as a way to identify that from any assignments to where you are strict about students not using AI, and then also learning how they can use it in a beneficial way, or just helping to better recreate some of the assignments that to where there might be some usefulness for AI. But again, there is still, I think that's a lot's going to change about AI in the future, in the very near future. We've seen how fast it's already grown so quickly. So I think that just the more that we can be vigilant about understanding what it's capable of doing, that we would then be able to identify within our own fields and our own specific subjects that we're teaching how it can be used in a bad way and how it can be used in a good way. And then also helping the students understand its uses can benefit them in the real world, or maybe even eventually hurt them in the real world. So kind of getting a general understanding amongst the students in that aspect of it as well. Because if they're getting through college just using AI and then expect to be able to continue that with their employer, that could go one of either way. They're going to either get fired very quickly or they're going to get promoted very quickly. And you never know. I don't know.
Yeah. Other thoughts, other questions, curiosities?
I'm just very curious to see where AI takes us and how it's going to be used both for the good and for the bad, just so that we're adequately prepared.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jason Jaggers, for meeting with me today and recording this podcast. In our next episode, I'll be meeting with Dr. Karen Freeberg from the Communication Department to discuss a graphic design portfolio project. Thanks for listening.